Get ready. Get set. Hold on. It's time for the Mouth of Matuszak show. And it's going to be one hell of a ride. Yeah. I'm your host, Paul-Gregory Matuszak. And you have me for 1 hour, approximately, this wonderful Friday morning. So welcome to Friday, July 25th, 2014. And as the tradition that we established last Friday, we're going to try to make it a little bit of a lighter show. Just want to remind you all of you out there who've been working hard all week long and building up your acumen, pursuing your happiness, as it will be, that if you work a standard work week, and this is the beginning of your weekend this evening, to go and balance your life out a little bit and make sure that you enjoy the fruits of your labors, whether those fruits are your house that you're paying the mortgage on, go and enjoy doing a little bit of work on it, or just sitting around and taking a good look at what you've accomplished. For my family, and that could include, doing a little bit of work in our garden, which we're starting to harvest some vegetables out of it. Or go and, your taxes support city parks and stuff like that. So since you're already paying for them out of your hard work, may as well go and enjoy them, right? So get out there and enjoy your weekend, folks. Enjoy your freedom. Enjoy what's left of our freedom as it gets chipped away little by little by the encroaching federal government. And enjoy what you have out there. And if you're here in Texas, just remember that the open carry of your pistols, of your sidearms, is currently not legal in this state. It's currently infringed upon, that Second Amendment right. So if you happen to see a group of people walking around with rifles, be they AR-15s or M4s, demilitarized M4s, in other words, they don't have the burst capability, or other rifles, don't be alarmed. They're there, well, first of all, to show that they can walk around with something openly carried to protect themselves and their families, but they're also there to protect you should something go down, because if when seconds count, the police are minutes away. And if you look at Supreme Court cases dating back the last several decades, I'll just cite Castle Rock versus Gonzalez for you real quick here, in the quick summary. It is not the job of the police to protect you. It is their job to respond to crimes that are going down currently, or that are in progress, or to pursue criminals after they've committed the crime. Not to stop the crime before it happens. Not to necessarily to deter crime, although police patrols may deter crime. That's not their primary purpose, whether they tell you that or not. So, with that in mind, if you see a group of people, especially if you're in Texas, walking around with their rifles, they're not there to cause trouble. In fact, they're there to do the exact opposite. Thank them and ask them why they're openly carrying rifles. Most of them would rather not be. Most of them would rather have a pistol on their hip. But in Texas, this little spot of insignificant dirt called Texas has that anti-Second Amendment infringement on the books that says they can't carry openly, that is, pistols. And you require special permissions in order to carry a pistol concealed. So, think about that. And then turn and look at the various groups who are all against open carry and against carrying firearms as it would be. They want you to have them locked up, so if something happens, by the time you can get the thing out to defend yourself, it's too late. And I agree, certain protections have to be taken, especially when you have young children around. Some of those best protections are actually educating your children in how to safely deal with firearms. And of course, rule number 1 is, unless you need to use it, don't touch it. Rule number 2, make sure it's not pointed at something that you do not want harmed. That means you or mommy or daddy or your friend or your stuffed teddy bear or whatever the case might be. So, that's rule number 2 to tell the kids. Don't touch it in the first place. And make sure it's not pointed at something it shouldn't be. And if it is, get an adult and tell them to make it go point somewhere else. And then, of course, you have the curious kids who will not listen. So, yeah, you do have to secure your firearms to keep them away from them. But you should not secure them to the extent where when you need it, you can't get to it. So, you have to find that balance again. Just like you have to find that balance between work and play. You worked hard, you did your due diligence all week. It's time to enjoy the fruits of those labors. So welcome to this Freedom Friday morning show. Or if you're listening to the podcast later on, I hope you're enjoying this lovely show later on in the day or at a later date, whenever your Friday is, the start of your weekend. And we're going to try to not make it as hardcore of a news show as we do. We're going to attempt, because there's so much going on out there. But in the spirit of things being more lighthearted, well, lighthearted isn't the right term, more on a happy note, celebrating freedom, we're going to start by celebrating the freedom of somebody who has been recently persecuted for their chosen religion. And this happens to be a lady whose children are American citizens. If I remember correctly, her husband is a U.S. citizen, but she converted to Christianity and after that was persecuted over it. Well, instead of being put to death as she was sentenced to being lashed and beaten and put to death. And her latest child, was born in captivity, so to speak, under very terrible conditions. Because it's not like the prisons in other countries are as sanitary as the ones here in the States are. And the ones here in the States may not be all that sanitary either. But magnify that, multiply that level of disgusting conditions by, I don't know, probably 1,000, and that's kind of what she was living in. But yes, I'm talking, of course, Miriam Ibrahim is finally free. In fact, if you go over to www.buzzpo.com, there's an article up there with a video. But here at the Matuszak show, we have the audio coming from the video. It discusses the freedom of Miriam Ibrahim, and I'm not sure, because I'm not Christian and I'm not a Catholic anymore and haven't been for decades. But I think she actually met with the Pope in Italy. If not, it's definitely a senior member of the clergy. So go ahead and read the story, but let's just listen in on the clip that's posted over there at BuzzPo. And it spins up.
A woman sentenced to die in Sudan for refusing to reject her Christian beliefs, is now safe and sound in Italy this morning, and she will be on her way to America, we are understanding. Miriam Ibrahim was pregnant when she was thrown in prison in Sudan after marrying her Christian husband. She gave birth to her daughter while shackled in chains during her time in internment. Leland Vittert has more on it for us from Washington this morning. So what is she doing with her first day of freedom? What a story this is, Leland.
Incredible journey, as you said, Martha, and obviously she's enjoying her first day of freedom. Miriam Ibrahim became a worldwide rallying cry for those worried about the plight of Christians in Muslim countries. And today, in Rome, she met with Pope Francis about her experience. The 27-year-old and the pontiff talked for about half an hour, in which she thanked him for his prayer and solidarity in helping gain her release. She was born to a Muslim father and a Christian mother, but in Sudan, she wasn't allowed to marry a Christian. When she did marry him in 2011, the Sudanese government stepped in and sentenced her to death. By the time she gave birth to her son, she was in jail. Her husband is an American citizen, and they tried to leave once her death sentence was overturned, but the Sudanese government said no. Up until yesterday, she was living at the U.S. Embassy, Martha, for protection.
So the U.S. has played a significant role in all of this, right?
Well, just how significant is up for debate. The Italians were clearly influential in the process, and the U.S. helped, but many said the United States didn't do enough. Yesterday, a hearing on Capitol Hill highlighted Miriam's case, and her supporters, along with members of Congress, were not happy with the State Department's handling of her case.
The U.S. government's disinterest in the plight of an American and his family is simply indefensible.
And now that she is out of Sudan, it's unclear what exactly the feeling will be and how this shakes out. She is going to be in Rome for a few more days and then fly to the United States with her husband and her child. Martha?
Interesting to see what she says when she starts talking about how all of this went down when she gets back. Leland, thank you very much.
How about that, folks? If you really consider things, going with all the immigration issues of the day, with the children flocking in from South and Central America, etc., if there's anybody coming to America who deserves some level of asylum, it would be Miriam Ibrahim. I mean, first of all, her husband and her children are all legally, based on our laws, American citizens. And so she has very close familial ties when you think about that, which satisfies a couple of the criteria out there within our laws. But then, yes, this was a religious persecution, but it was also political, because the government in Sudan is a very religious-based government, where they infringe upon what we considered sacred, and that is that the First Amendment rights to practice your religion openly and freely. And she didn't have that. So, we can all rejoice on behalf of Miriam Ibrahim and give her lots of well wishes as she makes her trek here. And thank the powers that be, whether they be Yahweh, or Jehovah, or God, or Jesus, or any of the myriad of gods and goddesses that I worship. If you're a religious person, you can thank your gods that she's coming someplace where she can be free and safe. And this is just deplorable, the way she was persecuted. So this is a happy ending to a very, very scary story. It's a nightmare for her, I'm sure. And continuing along that same vein of thought about religious persecution, I hate to turn around with a high note and then bring in a downer, but this shouldn't be a downer. This should be a call to action to bring another happy ending. But evidently a good Catholic population, a good-sized one given the country and its makeup, but in Mosul, Iraq, where there's a a Catholic cathedral there. And I can tell you stories or observations from my time in Mosul. But evidently, the newly appointed caliphate of ISIS, otherwise known as the Islamic State of Iraq, or otherwise known as the political arm of Al-Qaeda Iraq, have declared that they're going to be forced to convert, and that their young girls, their females, are going to face what they call female circumcision, which really is not circumcision at all. What it is it's genital mutilation. Certain nerve centers around a certain body part that begins with the C and ends with the wrist are pretty much going to be rendered useless, and that's part of their female circumcision, as they call it. Basically, removing their ability to enjoy, physically feel any pleasure out of producing children, which, if you really think about it, is really against the grand design of how human beings were created by whatever power, whatever name you give to the power that created us. So it really goes against the grand design, goes against nature, goes against science, if you want to put it that way. If you worship science instead of deities, instead of seeing how they actually work together. But yeah, that's a crime. First, they're being told they can't worship their god or their religion in their way, and then they're being told you're going to undergo this religious ritual of being mutilated, despite the fact it may not even be your religion that is doing it to you. It's just deplorable. And like I said, I spent some time in Mosul. In fact, I'm penning a book about it, but the book is not really so much about Mosul. It's about other things. It just happens to be that I was on duty in Mosul for about 14 months during the time period I'm going to discuss. And I saw that Catholic church several times, and I saw pictures of it from before the Saddam era, and even at the beginning of it. It was a beautiful, beautiful building, but it had been, over the decades, not given the best treatment, not treated very well by non-Catholics or non-Christians, and all the windows boarded up and replaced with wood or whatever they could put up in the windows to cover those openings. Burn marks on the outside. Just a shame the way that this building was treated. If in other countries some other religious gathering site was given the same kind of treatment, there would be an international outcry. If this was a synagogue or a mosque or a Buddhist temple, there'd be an international outcry. Yet the treatment of this building went largely unnoticed, undiscussed, unrevealed for decades. And still, every Sunday, I mean, if we were out on patrol with our Iraqi counterparts and we went near that area, you'd still see the locals, the local Catholics, Iraqi Catholics, dressing up in their Sunday best and going to Mass. And it was a beautiful sight, especially, given the time I was in Iraq, which was that particular time, when I was in Mosul, which was around the 2009-2010 era, towards the end of the surge and the beginning of kind of our start to wind down forces there, and they were relatively free. And it was a beautiful sight to see the religious freedom there. Well, hopefully somebody can help